The battlefield was silent at first, only the sound of wind moving across the ruined colony streets. Smoke rose slowly from broken towers, and the alien army stood ready, their glowing weapons pointed forward. The alien commander, tall and armored, in black steel, raised his clawed hand and gave the order to fire. A storm of energy beams rushed toward the human defenders. Plasma bolts exploded against walls. Red lasers cut through the air. The ground shook as cannons fired. The sky itself turned bright from the power of alien weapons. The soldiers of the alien empire believed this would be over in seconds. But then, something happened. The humans did not fall. The blast struck them. Smoke covered their bodies. But when the smoke cleared, the humans were still standing. Their uniforms were burned. Their skin had marks, but they were alive. Walking forward step by step, an alien warrior gasped loudly, his voice trembling with fear. "Enemy weapons don't work on humans," he shouted. His cry spread like fire through the alien ranks. Soldiers looked at one another, their glowing eyes wide, their claws shaking as the impossible truth grew clear. The commander roared at them to keep firing. Again, waves of energy crashed into the humans, but still they advanced. One man raised his rifle and fired back. The simple metal bullet tore through alien armor like it was nothing. The aliens watched in horror. Their super weapons could not break humans, yet humans' simple tools could kill them. Whispers filled the alien ranks. "They cannot be harmed," one muttered. "They are cursed." Another said, "No." The warrior who shouted earlier whispered, "They are something else. Something beyond us." The humans did not rush. They did not scream. They marched forward with steady eyes. Their faces were covered in dirt and sweat, but their hearts were strong. To the aliens, it looked less like soldiers and more like walking giants of war. One human raised his hand, signaling the others. In that moment, the aliens felt hunted, as if the humans were predators and they were prey. A group of humans charged forward, throwing grenades that shook the ground. The explosions tore holes in alien lines, and the warriors scattered like frightened animals. The commander growled in rage, his armored claws digging into the ground. "How can this be?" he shouted. He turned to his science officer, who stood frozen with fear. "Our weapons are useless." "Commander," the officer stammered, "their biology, their bodies, they do not respond to energy attacks as other species do." The commander's rage turned to dread. He had fought many enemies across the galaxy, but never one like this. The humans were not stronger, not faster, not more advanced, and yet they walked through fire as if it were rain. The alien warrior who had shouted earlier felt his hands grow cold. He had trained his whole life to fight with honor, to serve the Empire. But how do you fight a species that refuses to die? He looked into the eyes of one human soldier, a scarred man with a broken helmet. The human stared back without fear, and the warrior felt something deep in his chest. Fear for the first time. The ground shook again, but this time it was from human tanks rolling forward. Heavy machines, built from steel and smoke, tearing through alien lines. The humans fired their cannons, and alien warriors screamed as metal shells destroyed them with brutal force. No shield could block it. No armor could withstand it. The commander raised his sword and shouted for his soldiers to stand their ground. But many of them hesitated, their eyes filled with doubt. They had always believed their weapons made them gods of war. Now facing humans, they saw the truth. Their weapons were nothing. Their power was broken. One alien soldier dropped his weapon and ran. Another followed, then another, until whole squads began to retreat. The commander roared in fury, but his voice was lost in the chaos. The humans pressed forward, slow and unstoppable. Like a tide that could not be turned back, they fired their rifles, their tanks roared, and their boots crushed alien ground. Step by step, they advanced deeper into the colony, and with every step, the alien army's fear grew. The warrior who had shouted at first stood frozen, his claws trembling around his useless weapon. He whispered again, "Enemy weapons don't work on humans." His voice was soft now, almost like a prayer, but in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. If humans could not be stopped by weapons, then how could they ever be defeated? The battlefield, once filled with alien pride, now belonged to fear, and the humans kept marching, unstoppable, unbroken, and unknown. Asterisk. The alien army had always believed themselves to be the strongest warriors in the galaxy. For centuries, their empire had conquered worlds with fire and plasma. No enemy ever stood against them for long, but now facing humans, doubt spread through their ranks like poison. The battlefield was filled with smoke and screams. The humans kept advancing, their rifles cracking, their tanks shaking the earth. Every alien weapon fired at them seemed worthless, as if the humans were protected by invisible gods. The alien commander tried to rally his soldiers. "Stand your ground," he shouted, his deep voice echoing across the battlefield. But his words carried less weight now, because the soldiers had already seen the truth with their own eyes. One warrior whispered to another, "I shot him 3 times, point blank, and he just kept walking." Another soldier trembled. "My plasma cannon overheated, and still he came closer." Their claws shook, their armor felt heavier than ever, and their eyes were wide with fear. The warrior who had shouted first in shock was still frozen in place. His weapon was warm from overuse, but his heart was colder than ice. He stared at the humans pushing forward, and in that moment, he realized something terrible. Fear was not only in the soldiers, it was inside him too. The commander forced squads into formation, but their discipline cracked. Some fired wildly, missing their targets. Others lowered their weapons, too afraid to waste energy on something that could not be killed. The proud army of the Empire began to look like a crowd of frightened children. The humans, in contrast, moved with calm determination. They did not scream with rage. They did not celebrate victory. They marched forward like a storm that knew its path. Their silence was more terrifying than any battle cry. The science officer ran to the commander, his breathing sharp and fast. "Commander, this war is a mistake," he hissed. The commander grabbed him by the throat, lifting him from the ground. "Explain yourself, coward," he growled. The officer struggled to speak. "Their biology resists our weapons. I told you, we cannot fight them with energy. They are different." The commander dropped him to the ground with disgust, but inside his heart, even he felt the weight of those words. Different. Yes, the humans were different. They were soft in body, but unbreakable in spirit. An alien medic tried to drag a wounded soldier away from the front. The soldier coughed, his chest crushed by a human tank shell. His last words were a whisper. "Why? Why can they harm us, but we cannot harm them?" The medic had no answer, only silence. The warrior who doubted everything now began to think deeply. He remembered the ancient tales told by the elders, stories of a species that could not be destroyed by fire or light, a species that walked through death itself. He had once laughed at those tales, calling them myths, but now standing on this battlefield, he felt those legends had come alive. The fear spread wider, faster than the flames. Entire squads began to retreat, their commanders shouting in vain. The Empire's proud banners fell into the mud. Stained with blood and smoke, the humans kept pushing forward, and each step was like thunder in the hearts of the aliens. The commander finally raised his sword to charge. He wanted to remind his warriors of their pride, of their oath to the Empire. But when he looked back, only a handful still stood behind him. The rest were already running, their weapons dropped, their courage gone. Rage filled the commander, but under that rage was something he refused to admit: fear. The humans could not be stopped, and worse, they did not even seem to try hard. This was not their limit. This was only their beginning. The warrior watched as one human soldier walked calmly through plasma fire. The blast scorched his armor and burned his skin, but he did not slow down. With one shot of his rifle, he dropped an alien officer where he stood. The warrior whispered, What kind of creatures are you?" The science officer crawled back to his equipment. He scanned the battlefield, desperate for answers. What he saw only deepened his horror. The humans' bodies reacted strangely to energy waves. Their cells absorbed, twisted, and scattered the plasma heat. It was not technology. It was not armor. It was their nature. Humans were born immune to what destroyed every other species. The officer shouted the results, but few listened. The soldiers were already breaking. The warrior's heart pounded as he realized the truth. This was no ordinary enemy. This was the beginning of something the galaxy was not ready for. The commander struck down one of his own soldiers for retreating. But even that act of violence could not restore discipline. The fear was too deep, too heavy, too real from the smoke. The humans stepped closer. Their eyes locked onto the aliens, and though not a single human spoke, the warrior felt as if their silence shouted louder than any words. "We cannot be stopped." The alien army's pride cracked, their ranks broke, and the humans, steady as stone, claimed the battlefield one step at a time. The humans had marched forward through fire and smoke. The alien army's proud formation was broken, and fear spread through their ranks. Now, it was time for the humans to strike back, not with defense, but with full force. The human commander, a scarred veteran named Captain Hayes, raised his hand in the air. His soldiers stopped for a moment, their rifles steady, their eyes sharp. He gave one single word: advance. The sound was calm, but it carried the weight of thunder. At once, the human counterattack began. Bullets flew, grenades exploded, tanks rolled across the rubble. The simple weapons of mankind roared louder than alien plasma cannons. Each shot was precise, each strike full of purpose. The aliens tried to fire back, but their weapons only scorched the ground and walls. Human bodies glowed in the light of plasma blasts but did not fall. The fear inside the alien warriors grew heavier. They were fighting enemies who refused to die, enemies who kept pushing no matter what. A squad of human soldiers charged into an alien trench. The aliens screamed as bayonets and knives slashed through them. One human swung the butt of his rifle and broke through an alien's helmet. The warrior inside dropped instantly, his blood dark and thick on the ground. The aliens realized with terror that humans fought not only with weapons, but with raw strength and fury. The warrior who had shouted first in shock now watched helplessly. He fired again and again, but every human he hit kept moving. One human soldier was struck by 3 blasts, yet he leapt into the trench and dragged 2 aliens down with him. The warrior whispered, "They fight like demons." The alien commander ordered heavy artillery to fire on the humans. Great cannons lined the ridges, plasma shells as bright as suns rained down. The ground exploded, dust rose high into the sky. For a moment, silence fell, and the aliens dared to hope. But then, from the smoke, the humans came again, marching forward, coughing, bloodied, but alive. Their rifles lifted, their tanks roaring. The aliens' hope shattered into despair. Captain Hayes gave another signal, and the humans spread out. Snipers found high ground and picked off alien officers one by one. Machine gunners set up along the flanks, raining endless fire. Tanks crushed alien barricades as if they were made of paper. Every human movement was sharp, disciplined, unshaken. An alien medic shouted desperately, "They have no shields. They have no armor. How are they still alive?" But no answer came. The truth was already known. Humans did not need shields. Their bodies were the shield. Their willpower was the armor. The alien warrior tried to rally his squad. "Stand with me," he cried, his claws raised high. But when a wave of humans charged toward them, his squad broke instantly. Half ran. The rest were cut down by gunfire. The warrior fell to his knees, watching the blood of his comrades soak into the ground. The science officer, hiding behind broken machinery, spoke into his recorder. "The humans, they absorb energy. Plasma waves scatter within their cells. It is not technology, it is nature itself." His voice shook. We cannot defeat them with our weapons, and their weapons. Their weapons kill us with terrifying ease. The counterattack grew fiercer. The humans pushed deeper into alien lines, tearing down banners, blowing apart bunkers. Alien screams filled the air. But the humans did not stop. They were no longer defending their colony. They were taking the war to their enemy. One alien stronghold remained, guarded by heavy cannons and elite soldiers. The commander ordered them to hold it at all costs. But when the humans reached the stronghold, they split into squads, moving like shadows through smoke. Explosions echoed as grenades tore holes in walls. The defenders fell one by one until silence covered the fortress. The alien commander, furious and desperate, charged forward with his blade drawn. He met Captain Hayes in the ruins of the stronghold. With a roar, he swung his blade, glowing with energy. Hayes blocked with nothing more than a steel bayonet. The blade sparked, but the bayonet did not break. The commander's eyes widened in disbelief. Hayes pushed forward, his strength raw and unshaken. The commander stumbled back, his pride shattered. He had believed no weapon in the galaxy could stop his blade. But now, even that belief was gone. The warrior watched the duel with trembling hands. His commander, the symbol of the Empire's power, was being pushed back by a single human. Fear grew so deep inside him that it felt like chains around his chest. The humans' counterattack was complete. The alien lines collapsed, their soldiers scattered. What was once a proud army was now broken, and the humans stood victorious, their flag rising in the smoke. The warrior lowered his weapon, his voice weak. This is not war. This is something greater, something unstoppable. For the first time in his life, he doubted if his people would ever recover from this battle, because now he knew the humans had only just begun. The battlefield was quiet now, only the sound of distant fires and the crackling of broken machines. The alien warrior stood among the ruins, his weapon still warm in his hands. His army, once proud and unshaken, was scattered and broken. Humans had turned defense into a storm, and that storm had crushed everything in its path. The warrior's claws trembled as he looked at the fallen. Bodies of his comrades lay in the mud, their armor split open, their weapons useless beside them. He had fought many battles before, but never had he seen warriors fall with such fear. In their eyes, fear not of pain, but of facing an enemy that could not be harmed. He remembered the moment clearly, the first human walking through plasma fire, his own voice shouting in shock, "Enemy weapons don't work on humans?" Those words still echoed in his head like a curse. Since that moment, something inside him had cracked. The commander was gone, perhaps dead, perhaps fled. The chain of command was broken. The Empire had promised glory, but all he could see now was defeat. The warrior lowered his weapon, but his thoughts grew louder. Why do our strongest weapons fail? Why do their simple bullets kill us, while our cannons mean nothing? What kind of creatures walk through fire and smile in the face of death? He tried to push those thoughts away, but as he looked at the humans gathering their wounded, helping each other with calm discipline, he saw something his people did not have: unity, courage, and a strange kind of faith. The humans were not just fighting, they believed. The warrior's chest tightened. Doubt, once a small spark, now burned like a fire. He thought of the old legends, stories the elders whispered but the Empire mocked, tales of a species born in shadows of chaos, a species that would resist destruction itself. He had laughed at those stories once, but here and now, he was no longer laughing. One human soldier walked past, his face bloodied, his helmet cracked, yet his eyes were sharp, unafraid. The human looked directly at the warrior, and for a second, their gazes locked. The warrior felt his breath catch. It was not hatred he saw in the human's eyes. It was determination, a quiet promise that they would never bow, never kneel, never break. The warrior turned away quickly, ashamed of his own fear. He had sworn loyalty to the Empire, sworn to fight until death. But now he wondered, What if loyalty itself was a chain? What if the Empire was wrong, and these humans were not enemies, but something more? Something that fate had unleashed upon the galaxy. Around him, surviving soldiers muttered, "They cannot be beaten. They are cursed. They are demons of flesh." The warrior clenched his claws, trying to silence them, but deep in his heart, he agreed. No weapon, no strategy, no commander's roar could erase the truth he had seen with his own eyes. The science officer crawled from the wreckage, his body shaking. He carried a broken data pad, filled with results from the battlefield. "Warrior," he whispered, "I know why. Why we cannot kill them." The warrior turned sharply, his voice low. "Tell me," the officer explained. "Their cells, their biology. They scatter energy. Plasma cannot bind, lasers cannot burn. They are living shields." The warrior felt his knees weaken. So it was not luck, not tricks, but nature itself that protected humans. He looked up at the sky, dark and filled with smoke. If this truth spread across the Empire, it would break morale forever. If soldiers believed no weapon could harm humans, no army would dare to fight again. The warrior realized the Empire was already cracking. He thought of his own family, his homeworld, the faces of his people. Would they too face these humans one day? Would they also fall, helpless and broken, against an unstoppable tide? For the first time, he thought not of victory, not of duty, but of survival. Perhaps loyalty to the Empire was no longer the right path. Perhaps the path forward lay with the humans. But how could he betray everything he had sworn to protect? The warrior gripped his weapon tight, his claws dug into the metal, his heart heavy with doubt. He looked again at the humans, standing tall in the ruins, helping each other, moving with purpose. They were not conquerors in this moment. They were survivors, and yet, in their survival, they had conquered everything. The warrior whispered to himself, "Are we fighting the end of our empire, or the beginning of something greater?" He had no answer, only the heavy weight of questions. The doubt inside him grew stronger with every heartbeat. Night fell over the battlefield. The fires burned low. The cries of the dying faded. But inside the alien warrior's mind, a new battle had begun. A battle between loyalty and truth, between fear and curiosity. And he knew that whichever side he chose, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The night after the battle was heavy with silence. The alien warrior could not sleep. His mind was filled with questions, doubts, and the memory of humans walking through fire. He sat among the ruins, staring at his useless weapon, the metal. Dark with ash for the first time in his life, the warrior did not feel like a soldier. He felt like prey. At dawn, the sound of boots returned. The humans were moving again, disciplined and focused. They carried their wounded, rebuilt their machines, and prepared for the next push. Every step they took shook the ground and the hearts of the surviving aliens. The commander of the alien forces was nowhere to be found. Some whisper he was dead. Others believed he had fled. But the warrior knew one truth. The humans had broken him. Now leaderless, the alien army had no choice but to retreat. But the humans did not allow them to escape. They pushed forward with unstoppable strength. Every trench the aliens built was torn apart. Every barricade destroyed. The humans fought like storms, and storms could not be stopped. The warrior stood at the edge of the battlefield, his heart beating hard. For days he had lived with doubt. But now fate forced him to face the truth. The humans were coming directly toward his position. There was no time left to hide behind questions. It was time to fight. He gripped his weapon, claws trembling. Around him, a few soldiers gathered. Their eyes filled with fear. One whispered, "They cannot be killed. What chance do we have?" The warrior forced himself to shout, "Stand firm. If we fall with honor." But even as he spoke, his voice carried doubt. The humans appeared through the smoke, their rifles lifted, their boots steady, their eyes sharp at the front. Was a soldier with a scar across his face. his helmet broken but his gaze unshaken. The warrior felt his chest tighten. He recognized this human. It was the same one he had locked eyes with before, the same one who had walked through plasma. Fire as if it were nothing. The battle began. Plasma fire lit up the ruins, but once again, it did nothing. The humans marched forward, firing bullets that struck true. Aliens screamed, their bodies falling into the mud. The warrior roared and charged, his blade glowing. With energy, he met the scarred human in close combat. The warrior swung his blade with all his strength. The weapon hit the human's armor and sparked. But the man did not fall. Instead, the human stepped forward, grabbing the warrior by the arm and shoving him back. The warrior stumbled, shocked, his weapon nearly slipping from his claws. The scarred human lifted his rifle, not to shoot, but to strike. The butt of the weapon crashed against the warrior's helmet. His vision blurred, his knees bent. The human did not hesitate. He pressed forward with terrifying calm. The warrior swung again, desperate. His blade cut across the human's chest, leaving a smoking line. But the man did not cry out, did not falter. He simply pushed forward again, his strength raw, his will unbroken. For the first time, the warrior felt true fear. Not fear of death, but fear of life. Fear of an enemy who refused to die. Fear of an enemy who could not be stopped. It was as if the human was not a man but something greater, something eternal. The fight grew desperate. The warrior blocked, swung and slashed, but the human kept moving, silent, relentless. Each step forward felt like a mountain falling upon the alien's chest. The other aliens around him began to break. They saw their strongest warrior being pushed back. They saw the scarred human walking through fire and blows, and their courage shattered completely. "Run!" one shouted. Soon, the trenches emptied as aliens fled into the ruins. The warrior was left nearly alone, locked in combat with the human. His weapon sparked one last time, but his arms were heavy. The human shoved him hard, knocking him to the ground. The warrior looked up, breathing fast, his weapon slipping from his claws. The scarred human stood over him, rifle aimed, but he did not shoot. Instead, the human stared down with cold, steady eyes. It was not mercy, not hatred. It was something far worse, recognition, as if the human was silently saying, "You are no longer a threat." The warrior's heart pounded. His claws dug into the dirt. He had fought for his empire, for pride, for honor. But none of that mattered now. He was alive not because of his strength, but because a human allowed it. The human stepped back, turning to rejoin his squad. The warrior lay on the ground, trembling. His doubt, once a whisper, was now a roar inside his head. He whispered to himself, "If even I cannot stop them, then who can?" For the first time, the warrior felt small. Not because he was weak, but because humans were something greater than strength. They were unbreakable. The turning point had come, not just in the battle, but in the warrior's soul. The war was no longer about victory or defeat. It was about survival. And he no longer believed the empire would survive the rise of humans. The battlefield lay in ruins. Smoke drifted across broken towers. Alien banners burned in the mud, and human soldiers raised their flag high. The counterattack was complete, but the war was not over. For the alien warrior, lying among the wreckage, the true battle now raged inside his mind. He had fought humans with all his strength, yet they had not fallen. He had faced them in close combat, but even his glowing blade could not stop them. Now fear twisted into something sharper, curiosity. What were these creatures? Why did no weapon harm them? The science officer approached him, limping, his armor cracked, his hands holding a broken data pad. His eyes glowed with panic, but also with discovery. "Warrior," he whispered, "I know the truth. I have seen it in the scans." The warrior turned to him, his voice low. "Tell me, before my mind breaks with questions." The officer crouched, his voice trembling. "Their bodies, their very biology. It is not like ours. He tapped the data pad, showing strange patterns of light. When plasma touches their cells, the energy scatters, splits, weakens. It cannot bind to them as it binds to us. The warrior frowned. You mean, they are born resistant? The officer nodded. Yes, not because of shields, not because of machines, but because of nature itself. The warrior's breath caught in his chest. So it was true. Humans were not using tricks, not using hidden armor. They themselves were the armor. He remembered the scarred human soldier staring down at him, standing like a wall against all destruction. It had not been luck or fate. It was what they were, the officer continued. But there is more. They are not invincible. They bleed when cut. They break when struck with solid force. He looked up, his voice urgent. That is why bullets, knives, and metal shells kill us, but kill them slowly. Energy cannot destroy them, but physical force can. The warrior's eyes widened. It was not magic, it was balance. Humans were weak in one way, but unbreakable in another, and that balance made them the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. Do you understand? The officer whispered. Our empire has built weapons of light, plasma, and fire for centuries. We have abandoned the old ways of metal, steel, and impact. But humans, they never abandoned them. They fight with iron and gunpowder, and that is why we fall. The warrior's claws tightened on his weapon. He thought of the empire's endless wars, every enemy destroyed by burning light, every battle won with plasma cannons. But now, against humans, all those victories meant nothing. The empire had forgotten the oldest weapons, and humans had mastered them. A heavy silence filled the air as the warrior spoke softly. If this is true, then our empire is doomed. The officer looked at him with hollow eyes. Yes, unless we change everything we are. But change takes time, and humans. They are already moving. The warrior looked toward the battlefield. The humans were tending to their wounded, repairing machines, already preparing for the next march. Their discipline was terrifying, their unity unshaken. They were not only immune to the Empire's weapons, they were fast learners. Each battle made them stronger. Each victory pushed them closer to becoming unstoppable. The warrior closed his eyes, his heart heavy. He thought of his people back home, of families who trusted the Empire to protect them. Would they survive the storm that was rising? Or would humans sweep across the stars, crushing the Empire as easily as they had crushed this battlefield? The officer spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. There is something else. Their minds. The warrior opened his eyes. What of them? The officer hesitated, then said, They fight without fear of death. I have scanned their bodies during combat. Even when they are dying, their brains burn with determination. They keep moving, keep fighting, as if pain itself cannot hold them. It is not only their bodies that resist, it is their will. The warrior felt a chill run through him. Yes, he had seen it himself. Humans fighting through wounds, charging even when bleeding, never stopping. The scarred soldier he fought had taken a burning slash across his chest and still pushed forward. No empire could defeat enemies like this. For long, the warrior finally whispered the thought he had feared. If no weapon of ours can stop them, then nothing will. The officer looked at him, his voice hollow. They will spread, warrior. They will rise, and they will not stop. The warrior turned his gaze toward the humans again. They looked small, fragile, their bodies weak compared to his kind. And yet, they had brought an empire to its knees. He wondered if the galaxy would soon belong to them. Not because they wanted it, but because nothing could deny it. As the night grew darker, the warrior sat in silence. The officer beside him scribbled his last notes. The truth was now clear, the secret revealed. Humans were not just another species. They were the test of survival itself, and the galaxy was failing that test. The warrior gripped his weapon tighter, but this time, it was not with pride or certainty. It was with fear. Fear that the war he had entered was not about victory or defeat, but about the end of everything he had ever known. Asterisk. The ruins were quiet, but the warrior's mind was not. His heart beat heavy in his chest, and his claws dug into the dirt. The science officer's words still echoed in his head. Humans cannot be stopped by our weapons. Their very nature resists. US, they will spread. They will rise. The warrior had seen it with his own eyes. He had fought them face to face, felt their strength, felt their will. He had watched his commander fall, his army scatter, his empire's pride shatter. Now, only one question burned inside him. What path should he choose? He looked across the battlefield. Humans stood together, their wounded supported by comrades, their dead carried with respect. They rebuilt their machines with swift hands, preparing for the next march. They were not celebrating, they were not arrogant, they were simply ready, ready for war, ready for survival, ready for anything. The warrior turned to the science officer. What will the Empire do when they learn this truth? The officer's eyes dimmed. They will deny it, they will lie, they will send more soldiers into death, they will not change. And that will destroy us. The warrior knew he was right. The Empire was proud, blind with arrogance. They believed no enemy could stand against them. But humans had not only stood, they had walked through fire and crushed the Empire's pride beneath their boots. He felt torn in two. On one side, loyalty to the Empire, the oath he had sworn since birth. On the other side, the truth he could no longer deny. If he stayed loyal, he would march back into endless defeat. If he broke that loyalty, he would live as a traitor. But perhaps he would survive. His claws trembled as he whispered, "What do I owe more, my empire or the truth?" The next day, the warrior was captured. A squad of human soldiers surrounded him as he dropped his weapon into the dirt. They bound his claws, but they did not kill him. Instead, they brought him before their commander, Captain Hayes, the scarred human who had stood unbroken in battle. Hayes looked at him with steady eyes. The warrior felt small under that gaze, yet strangely calm. He bowed his head and spoke, "I am not here to resist. I am here to speak." The humans listened, waiting. He told them everything, about the Empire, about their weapons, about their arrogance, and finally, about the truth, that humans could not be destroyed by energy, that their biology itself was a shield, that they were the one species the Empire could never conquer. The humans did not interrupt. They stood in silence, their faces cold, their eyes sharp. When he finished, Hayes stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "Why tell us this? You are our enemy." The warrior lowered his head. "Because the Empire cannot win. And I no longer believe they should. You fight with unity, with courage, with willpower beyond fear. We fight with pride and arrogance. I have seen enough. I choose the truth, even if it makes me a traitor." The human commander studied him for a long time. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of a choice. Finally Hayes spoke. "Then you are no longer our enemy, but if you betray us, remember, we do not forgive." The warrior nodded, his heart heavy but clear. This was his choice, his path. He would live not for the Empire, but for survival, for truth, for the future. That night, under the broken sky, he stood among the humans. He watched them laugh quietly with one another, share food, tend to their wounds. They were not gods, not demons. They were something stranger, fragile yet unbreakable, weak in body yet strong in spirit. The galaxy had never seen anything like them. He whispered to himself, "If enemy weapons do not work on humans, then nothing in this galaxy will stop them." But in the back of his mind, another thought rose like a shadow. If nothing can stop them, what will happen when something even they cannot resist finally appears? The warrior knew the truth. The Empire was doomed, but beyond that doom, a new power was rising. The humans would spread. They would fight. They would conquer not by choice, but by survival itself. And he, once an enemy, would walk beside them, not as a slave, not as a prisoner, but as a witness to the future, The warrior lifted his eyes to the stars. The galaxy was wide, full of dangers yet unseen, and he knew this war was only the beginning. The humans had survived the impossible, but the question remained, what nightmare waits in the dark, one that even humans cannot resist?